Welcome to today's Office Hours, our monthly discussion for Eloqua professionals. My name is Richard Holder, and I'm the head of marketing at Forethought Marketing, and I have the pleasure of being your host today. Joining me today are Laura Mullen from First Tech Federal and Sam Gallinelli from Forethought Marketing. And I'll have them introduce themselves in just a moment. Before I do that, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. We'll be taking questions throughout this event today. We do have others on standby if you have questions beyond just what the presenters today are going to be talking about. It will be recorded and a link will be sent to you later today so you can watch a replay. I invite you to ask questions. You can use the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. Please use that. It allows us to queue up those questions and make sure we get those addressed. And feel free, as I said before, to ask questions for today's presenters or for future topics, and we'll make sure that we add those to the list of things we're going to cover. And with that, let me turn the time over to Sam and Laura.
All right. So as Richard already mentioned, my name is Sam Gallinelli. I am part of the team here at Forethought Marketing, and I've been working with Laura almost the whole time. So it's been close to 5 years now. I mean, I've been in Eloqua for probably 16 years at this point. I would say that working with First Tech greatly elevated my skill set in Eloqua because of what I needed to learn and the types of campaigns that I needed to support. And this is Laura. So she is a senior marketing technologist at First Tech. They're based in Portland, Oregon. And Laura, like me, has over 15 years of experience in marketing automation, primarily within Eloqua. And at First Tech, she's a project lead for integrations, implementing new technologies, and creating and executing successful email campaigns. Laura, if you want to add anything to that, you can.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. I guess I should tell you a little bit about First Tech. We're a large tier credit union. We provide a full range of products and services from banking to investments and insurance. So investments and insurance ends up being kind of a little bit like a B2B type of scenario where we're feeding the funnel. And then the rest is all B2C. We serve the technology community, including companies such as HP, Microsoft, Intel, and Amazon. And we have over about 650,000 members and 1,700 employees. And yeah, worked with Forethought since the beginning. I started 5 years ago. They've been our study partner since our original implementation. I think that was back in 2014.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Richard, you can go to the next slide. So we've already covered our introductions. Throughout this session, we're going to talk about First Tech campaigns, the way that they do them and why. We're going to talk about some of the challenges we face. And we're going to talk about our transition to custom object-based imports to support their Evergreen campaigns. So at First Tech, Laura already told you they're a bank, and they're using Eloqua in a business to consumer fashion. And they have close to 60 always on campaigns. You heard me say Evergreen. We're very familiar with that concept. Laura, do you want to explain what an Evergreen is and why it is that we need to have those in place?
Yeah, so really, it just means always on. So typically they're going to be activity fed or just a segment that we want action right away, and we need that campaign running all the time. And then the data is fed usually via an SFTP file drop that's automated as well.
Yeah, so for me, as somebody who's supported many different companies that use Eloqua, this was a huge departure for me because I was so used to handling segments inside Eloqua and building them based off of, profile or activity. based requirements. And with First Tech, they have a team that handles everything outside of Eloqua. I think most people belong to a bank, and you get those, when you join a bank, you get a welcome email, or I always get balance transfer email from either like my credit card company or my bank company all the time. So that's the types of campaigns that we run for First Tech. Laura, if you can tell me a little bit about our challenge with people that share email addresses, which is somewhat unique to a banking company using Eloqua, but just give a little more color to that.
Yeah. So often what we'll see, not often, it's a small segment of our entire member base. You'll see people that share an email address with the same household or within their family. And so you'll have multiple accounts and products within those accounts, but the same email address. And that gets pretty complex as we go through campaigns, because you could just have something like a first name, as simple as a first name gets overwritten, and then you're sending to the wrong individual. Just creates a bad member experience.
Yeah, I mean, it can definitely scare a parent too if the email that's supposed to be going to them is addressed to their child. So that's an issue where we faced quite often data getting overwritten using contact field. One of the other things I wanted to address is just the volume of campaigns that we do at First Tech, and why the Evergreen approach makes it actually possible for you guys to do all the campaigning that you need to do. So to give a little more detail on that, like, because they have over 60 campaigns running all the time, they also have ad hoc campaigns. And so we're sending out probably anywhere from like 6 to 20 one-off, not evergreen campaigns in a week. And there's 4 of us that really manage all of that work in Eloqua right now. And that is a full-time job for most of us. So the evergreen, once we have those set up, that means we have, 65 campaigns running every single day. And if we didn't have that automation set up, it just wouldn't be possible. It's part of why we do things the way that we do. You can go to the next slide, Richard. All right, so in the past, we set up their evergreens using contact imports. When we came up with this design together, it was super exciting. We were happy that we found this solution, and it was definitely something new for me, at least. But there was challenges that we ran into. So, Laura, do you want to just talk about a few examples of why the contact import method doesn't always work well for us?
Yeah, I can think of a few different campaigns, but one of the things that was super important to us is to be able to create campaigns for the mortgage team that were personalized. We'd want them to look like they came from the loan officer, and then so what would happen is their loan officer information would get overwritten improperly or not get overwritten, and then it would look like it would come from the wrong loan officer. And working with salespeople in the past, that's super sensitive. So we'd get upset loan officers, and then we found a few workarounds to try and take care of that field getting overwritten and taking on the latest loan officer, but it was always a little tricky. But yeah, and then creating like a way to dynamically bring in that data and always be current, that was one of the biggest challenge across the board, no matter what the data field that we're looking at.
Yeah, so with the contact imports, what we found was, and I was really surprised by this when we ran into it the first time, is because there's different data priorities set up in their Eloqua instance. If there was an existing value for a loan officer, for example, for their email address or their first name, it wasn't always being overwritten. And there's no way to really fix that unless you clear all the fields first. So at one point I engineered this crazy process where we first imported the list for the day and we cleared all the fields. And then an hour later, we ran it again and we updated the fields to make sure that those loan officers were correct. The problem with this is these are programs that are running and they're timed. So if there was ever any issues or like the file didn't come in on time, it broke pretty much the whole process. And there wasn't a way for us to change that data priority because there was things in the integration that needed to be set up a specific way. And so our workaround was to have clearing programs and then update programs after, which really had to be babysat quite a bit. The other piece to this is because these are always on campaigns and we have, shared email addresses, or we want the ability to send emails more than once to contacts, we can't just build an evergreen in a campaign canvas because it won't allow you to send an email more than once and have the segment continuously running. So we use programs to feed our campaigns, and the programs would have a segment in them. And when you turn a program on, if I turn it on right now, it's 2:12 Eastern time where I am, it's going to run every day at 2:12. So anytime we had a failure of a list coming in or something happened, it's a manual process to go and rerun that. Then you're turning a program off, and then you need to make sure you turn the program back on so that it catches the list. So it can be pretty cumbersome to deal with, and it requires a lot of babysitting, which is why we changed our approach. It was like we started doing it this year, and that's on our next slide. So you can go to that slide now, Richard.
Yeah, before we go there, we did have one question that came in, and I think perhaps you can answer it now, maybe later in your demonstration, but they asked, how did you address the shared email problem as we've described?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And so the way that we solve for that is by, instead of using contact fields, we use custom object fields now.
Great.
One other thing I wanted to point out, because the image that I put in the slide, I didn't even address, but if you go back, with the contact field approach, we always ran into this issue of not having enough fields because we're maxed out at a certain number of fields. And you can see right here, like First Tech is using all of their contact fields. And in order to make sure people are flowing into the right campaigns, we would use like a date as a unique identifier, a date field, which are hard to come by. So we were constantly trying to check for new fields, repurpose them, or find some way to uniquely identify people so they weren't flowing into the incorrect campaigns. All right, so moving to custom object imports so far has been a great decision for us. Laura, can you give us, can you give us a few examples of like why moving to the custom objects has resolved our issues that we faced with the contact imports?
Yeah, I mean, we've covered a few, but yeah, one of the main ones was that shared email addresses, allowing us to create, different custom objects or data sources for each person that's coming into a campaign, and then having those multiple campaigns running throughout the day and not worrying that somebody's going to get the wrong data added to their emails. And then Yeah, really that timing. Oh, I remember those days, Sam. It's like, you know, you'd miss a import and then have to go in and manually change the time, you know, deactivate a program, reactivate it, and then remember the next day to change that timing again back to the original timing. So yeah, that was super painful. Yeah, really expanding our data fields. I mean, we within a credit union or any financial institution, you're going to have a lot of data and a lot of ways to reach your member and personalize. So just expanding those fields has been amazing. Yeah, there's probably more that I'm not thinking, but so many improvements.
Yeah. So with one of the cool things, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, is when you use custom objects instead of contact fields, you can use custom object record services to feed your programs. So instead of our program, you know, pulling in the segment at the same time every day, as soon as that program, as soon as the custom object receives its list, so if it has new contacts or modified contacts, it adds those contacts right to the program feeder. So we never have to turn the program feeder off for any reason unless we need to make adjustments to the campaign or the program. And that took away that super annoying need to control what time we turn the programs on. So I can go into Eloqua now and show you a couple of things. I just want to check to see if there's any questions before I jump in there.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions here. So the first one is do you ever have custom object imports fail?
Yes. And I'll show you exactly what we do. So in the same way that sometimes contact imports fail, custom objects imports sometimes don't go off, or sometimes the list isn't there on time. It's a very easy manual. You just go into your CO import, find it and run it. You know, you make sure the list is there, but as soon as you run it, your program picks it up. So there's no turning things off, trying to reprocess data. It's way easier using the custom object approach.
Right. And maybe I should have asked this one first is how do you detect those imports, especially if they're being run automatically as an SFTP
Yes.
import?
So that's actually a really good question. We have, you know, Eloqua has out of the box alerts, but if you can imagine, we have 60 imports running and you get those error messages all the time. They're not easy to pick up. It's not obvious what's going on. We built an app for First Tech. It's called the Segment Monitoring app. And every single Evergreen campaign has a segment that picks up when your custom object has come in. So we have an import date on the custom object imports, and it'll say, you know, is this campaign is the import date today. And so that will pull contacts into the segment. If a segment is empty after the time that we know those imports are happening, we get alerts sent by the segment monitoring app, and it tells you exactly what the segment in the campaign is. We probably get 5 or 6 of those a day. Sometimes it's because there's nobody that came in that day, so the list is empty. And sometimes it's because something is going on the data side, in which case we'll reach out to the data team and say, hey, you know, what's going on? We didn't get this list today. And we're usually very quick to be able to figure out what's going on and fix it so that none of these campaigns aren't running and we're totally unaware. And I feel like for a long time, there were these issues happening and we just didn't know. So we weren't, you know, fixing it and making sure that people went into the campaigns when they needed to. Good question. I'm going to share my screen now. Let me just pull up Eloqua first. All right. Okay, so this is actually all of our custom object imports. You can see we have a ton. These are all different. Oh, hold on, I got disconnected. That does happen sometimes with my access into this database, but these are all different campaigns we run for First Tech. I set up a new import 2 days ago, I think, for them. And it looks like it needs to run. The last time it ran was yesterday. So I'm actually gonna first check to see if our list is in. So this is where we have all of these different files that are in their SFTP. So it looks like this list came in today at 10:44. So I'm going to run this. The last time it ran was yesterday at 12:50. I'm going to run it right now. And what's going to happen is it's not always instant because it's a program feeder. So sometimes it's on the 15-minute mark. So this right here is a program feeder. We have our listener here. And if you look at it, so this is our 2 custom object services. So one of them is from new contacts and one's for modified contact. And if I go to the custom object itself, in here you can see we've gotten any today. So it's still, yeah. So these are the ones that just came in today. And you set up, your field mapping in here the same way you would for any, like any contact import. So these are all the fields that we need for this specific email. Some of the emails have a lot of merges in them. So they might have like the last 4 digits of an account. They might have an APR rate. So this is a very basic email. The only thing we specify in this email is the unique first name. So once contacts come into this custom object via the import, they will also populate our segment. Let me find that. And if you look in here, our criteria is they have an upload date dynamically equal to today. This is yesterday. I'm going to refresh it and make sure contacts have come in. So we had 262 contacts come in today. So that segment monitoring app, which I'll show you, is not going to flag that these contacts weren't in there. So we know it was successful. And yeah, so now you can see our contacts have come in and they have we have our contacts still sitting in from yesterday, but our contacts from today have come in and they get fed right over to the campaign, which is right here. And they're waiting an hour. So at First Tech, one of the things that we always do is we have that wait step because we can't make mistakes with banking emails. So when we first launch campaigns, you'll see like this is their seed list. It's a really good tip actually for anyone using Eloqua. Their seed list gets the emails first. We only do this when we first kick off a campaign because we want to make sure the emails look good. And we have a whole team that looks at the emails. And if anything's wrong, they tell us. So by putting the real list into this wait step, it allows us to make fixes before a customer would actually get the email. And it's saved us thousands of times. This is the email itself, and you can see it's got this field merge here, which is brought in by the custom object. So we have a contact field first name, and because we're doing uploads all day long and sending out other campaigns, the chances of that first name being overwritten to the wrong name is very high. So one of the benefits of using those custom object first name fields is to make sure it's being pulled in as this latest value in the custom object. So we know that this campaign has now gone out successfully today. And it's all done through those custom object imports. Before I go and show the segment monitoring app, does anybody have any questions?
It doesn't look like we have any questions right now, and we are getting close to the end of our time. So if you do have questions, please be sure to submit them and we'll get to them before we finish today.
All right. So this is our segment monitoring scheduler. It'll pull up for me. It might take a second. Sometimes when I do too much, it boots me out. So every single Evergreen that we have has a segment. It's set up to reference that import date on the custom object. And we go in and we know, like, so for this is a direct deposit campaign. We know the list is coming in at 12 p.m. So at 12:15, we check to see if this segment is empty. And if it's empty, we get an alert. Let me see if I can find it. So this is an alert and it says segment monitoring app, the CXCC IVR member service Evergreen doesn't have any contacts in it. So me, or usually Emily, who's on Laura's team, she's like on top of these, very, very on top of them. We'll go check the segment. She'll check the import and it's easy for us to figure out what happened. And, you know, we'll do a quick fix to it, or most of the time with these alerts, it's just because the list was empty that day. And it's very technical, but that is the whole process for how we do our Evergreens with First Tech.
Great. Anything else you'd like to add, Lauren, or do we cover everything?
No, you pretty much covered it, and just been a great solution for us. And even that scheduler right there, that saved us so many times during the week, you know, several times a week it saves us.
Well, that's great to hear. All right, we don't have any more questions today, so I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Our next office hours will be on Thursday, September 28th. The topic, or at least one of the topics we'll have, is the new webhooks cloud app that was announced at the 23C release webinar. And we'll have one of the product managers there to answer your questions for that. Also, at the end of this, there'll be a survey. Please take a moment and answer the quick questions. It takes less than a minute, and that helps us improve our future events. And with that, I want to thank you again for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.